All right, welcome to the Kingdom of Pod. Jeff Caves here in Flower Mound, Texas, headed to Frisco for the Frisco Bowl on Saturday evening. And I want to take a quick look at the game, why Boise State is here, what to expect out of North Texas as an opponent, some of the sacrifices Andy Avalos may have made for this game. So it's a little bit beyond just how the offense and defense stack up. Let's just start with, what else could Boise State have gotten done? When they lost in the Mountain West Championship game, they're kind of damaged goods. A lot of championship game losing teams aren't always coveted by bowls because the fans won't travel well. And of course, in this case, fans aren't going to travel that great from Boise, Idaho to Dallas, Texas area for a game against North Texas. I get it. So, last year, I don't think Boise State wanted to go to the Barstool Sports Bowl. I don't think they wanted anything to do with it. It was a first-time bowl. It was a streaming bowl. It wasn't a great opponent. And they weren't confident, I bet, in how it would be all pulled off, given the Barstool Sports people. So I remember reading Portnoy's comments that he wasn't thrilled with Boise State when they pulled out of that bowl game. So I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't want them either. And so even there was, what was the opponent in the bowl had they went this year was Ohio. That wouldn't have done any good for recruiting. Playing in Tucson doesn't do them any good. You look here, you got a bunch of players on the team, including Green and Genty and others from Texas. Their family gets to go to the game. They have a better feeling about Boise State. They make a splash in the area that I'm in to certain people, not to everybody in the Metroplex. Dallas Cowboys own this town, and everybody else is a distant second, really. So I'm not going to get that far carried away with that. But listen, why do they like these kinds of bowls if they're going to have to play in a non-prestigious bowl against a so-so opponent per se? They'd rather get it done before Christmas. Now, that's on a personal level, and this speaks to the culture of the kind of program Andy Avalos wants to run and other coaches want to run. And I think there were times where Brian Harsin wanted to run a different program, and if they had to go through Christmas and play a better opponent and try to push the envelope, so be it. And he did some of that. And I don't know that that was always popular with coaches because of their families, their wives, and everything they sacrificed for some bowl games that weren't necessarily that outstanding. So Andy has a different idea about how he wants to run things, and this is one of them. He admitted in his presser that by taking this bowl game and being in the conference championship game, they lose a couple of recruiting weekends. And he was willing to sacrifice that and do some multitasking at the same time. So here's where they are. National Letter of Intent Day, early signing day is coming up Wednesday, just this coming Wednesday. So this is critical, I'm sure. Yeah, they could have got, theoretically in the Armed Forces Bowl, which is played at TCU Stadium in Fort Worth, and played Baylor, but not necessarily, knowing some of the people involved in all of this. ESPN calls all these shots with the commissioner of the conference. They want one of the military academies playing in that bowl game. Doesn't that make sense? Of course it does. So yes, that would have been a better opponent. It's a great atmosphere, well attended. I think the Frisco Bowl is a tremendous atmosphere for those who go. They're going to find this out. 20,000 seats. Frisco is an interesting area. People are getting it confused, I think. It's not where the Dallas Cowboys play. It's where they practice. Arlington is where the Cowboys play. And that is, I think, a little east of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Frisco is where they practice, and a lot of the players will live around that area. That is north of the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, about 30 minutes or so. I live in Flower Mound, about 12 minutes from DFW Airport, around Grapevine Lake, but I am south and east of where Frisco is. So Toyota Stadium is the home to the MLS team here, which the Hunt family of the NFL own. And it's 20,000 seat venue. North Texas played in the Frisco Classic, which is essentially the New Mexico Bowl, moved because of pandemic reasons to Toyota Stadium in Frisco. They only drew 11,000. North Texas was disappointed in that. So they'd like to have something better than that. Like I said, Boise State's been able to do some things on their own this week because of their connections in Dallas-Fort Worth. And I'm sure that's impressed upon recruits as well. They found themselves with more time on their hands, and they wanted their kids to go to the movies and go to play Topgolf. They took care of that on their own. That wasn't a bowl activity. And they thought that, hey, we can do better than whatever practice arrangements that the bowl game's doing for us. We're going to ask the Cowboys if we can practice there. Kellen Moore and all the connections with the Cowboys, sure, they made it happen. So the kids get a tremendous experience in practicing where the Cowboys practice, using those locker rooms, bumping into them. And who knows, don't you think some of those coaches may have watched the practice? They were there. So that's a tremendous advantage. On top of all of that, Frisco, if you haven't heard, is well known for their commitment to sports. The Soccer Hall of Fame is there, and all kinds of youth sports. And the PGA of America is moving there with a huge facility. Toyota has moved there with their major factory, and the Cowboys are there. So it's a tremendous place. And we'll see how it draws. I think it'll do better than the 11,000. I don't expect much from the Boise State fan base to come out to that game. In the DFW area, yes. The friends and family of the players, yes. There'd probably be a couple thousand would be my guess. I would think attendance, because it's an 8:15 local kickoff on a Saturday night. There's not much competition for it. I'm going to go out and say they'll do 15 to 20,000, somewhere in there. If I had to guess, I'll say 18,000. And that'd be a pretty good crowd for this bowl game if they could get it that high. And I would credit the Dallas-Fort Worth friends and family and fans of high school football and the players that come from the state of Texas that will come and get excited about watching not only the Boise State players from there, but the North Texas kids too, competing against Boise State. Now, get into the motivation. Let's get into the motivation briefly for this football game. And oftentimes we hear whoever's more motivated will be the winner of a bowl game outside of your college football playoff and even some of your New Year's Day 6 bowls. For example, how motivated is USC going to be in the Cotton Bowl? I'm going to go to that game at AT&T Stadium on January 2nd to play against Tulane with or without their quarterback. How motivated are they? What are they going to gain in that environment? That's a lot of coaching for Lincoln Riley to do. I think Boise State is in a situation where they have a lot more to lose here. They lost their last game. They're not excited about that. North Texas is in this game without their head football coach, without an athletic director, which doesn't concern them as much. They just elevated the number 2 guy into the AD's chair, but they don't care as much about that. They've also went out on a limb now and said that everything is going to be bigger and better, and they've got their coach now as well, who is a Texas guy, but he'll be in an observational role, so he's not going to get in there and start mixing it up. It's kind of a mess for the players. But I'm going to say that Boise State at this case, in this situation, is going to have the better organized, better prepared team ready to step forward. The North Texas assistants who were left behind are either interviewing for a new job with the new head coach or on the phones pounding, looking for work on their own too, because the coach who was fired doesn't have a gig. And so these guys are all out of work. And if you're out of work around Christmas and the door's closing when you can go get gigs, you got to pound it. How much recruiting are you going to do for North Texas? How about zero? And game planning? Well, we know what we did against this kind of an opponent from this other week. We'll get to that, and we'll work on that. We'll do our best, and it's our last game together, guys. I just don't think it's typically, in most circumstances, going to be effective. So I'm going to give Boise State the edge in the motivation. Defensively for North Texas, just some things worth watching. Not just trends and stuff, but players. They got a defensive player, KD Davis, who was the Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's a 2-time all-conference guy. The defense overall for North Texas isn't the strength, but watching Davis is. I bet he gets a pretty good shot to play in the NFL. They don't defend the run well. They're in the bottom 25 there. Their pass defense has had some challenges as well. They don't have the kind of defense that you're going to shut people down. They have the kind of offense, though, that can score some points and run the football. So the last thing Boise State wants is to not score a lot of points in this game and to see North Texas, have an opportunity to score a lot of points and get in some kind of shootout, because that's their only shot. So I would think Dirk's going to want to run this football, control that, and make Talon Green a run number, see how amped up Talon is, how calm he'll be making his reads, not trying to do too much. The way some of that Fresno State game went in the Mountain West Championship game, I'm sure they're talking to Talon about that very thing. Statistically, these guys allowed, let's see, a lot of points doing it. And so for Boise State, I would think that's an opportunity to get five touchdowns, some field goals on the board. And looking at one thing that I was able to watch highlights of is the Conference USA Championship game. Mobile quarterback hurt them. And that's definitely what Boise State brings to the table in Talon Green. Offensively, North Texas has some great running backs. Once they get that running game cranked up, then the pass game starts going off. They get tempo going on you. You're huffing and puffing, and you're looking for the next run play, and all of a sudden they're gashing you downfield with big pass plays. If KD Davis is worth watching on North Texas defense, then look at the 29-year-old quarterback for North Texas. That's right. He went out and played pro baseball, but that ought to be fun to just take a look at what a 29-year-old guy looks like. Great offensive line there, allowed less than one sack. So lack of prep, motivation, distracted, the game plan, doing the best they can with what they've got, but how much motivation do these guys have? A higher level of competition. All this adds up to Boise State should win this football game. Will they? We'll find out, but they should win this football game. And I'm sure Dirk Cutter wants good taste in his mouth for all those seniors, for his son, and for others that won't be playing football for Boise State anymore. The coaches and all the things that are on the line for recruiting in this area, they'd love to have a great showing of a dominant win or a convincing win. It does help when people come look at your program and know more about you and you're on display. So I think it's all important for those reasons. I don't know if we'll get a Bush Hamden sighting at the game or not, whether he'll make it to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I would think that's a possibility. North Texas has their own shenanigans to go through. They've got their head coach to introduce and their athletic director. And so everybody's got another agenda at this kind of a game. At the end of the day, that's it. Boise State should win this football game. That's what I expect to happen. For their sake, I'm hopeful that it's a dominant one, but there's at least a couple of players to watch at North Texas. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back with more on the Kingdom of Pod on the Believe Podcast Network, brought to you by Bet Online after the Boise State North Texas game. Probably post that on Sunday. Talk to you then.